On today's Locked On Texans podcast, Cody and I talk about just how unstoppable the duo of Will Anderson Jr. and Danielle Hunter can be for this defensive front, and how different is Joe Mixon compared to Devin Singletary.
You are Locked On Texans, your daily Houston Texans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Turn up on this Thursday episode of the Locked On Texans podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your Texans football analyst, John, some sports guy Hickman. On the other side of the screen, Texans credential media member, Sports Illustrated's own Cody Davis. If this is your first time listening or watching the Locked On Texans podcast, thank you for stopping by. We really love you. You're a part of the Locked On Texans family. Please be sure to subscribe, like, and comment on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. And thank you to all of our returning listeners and viewers. Coming back to the show as Cody and I continue to talk Texans here on this Thursday's episode. Now, we're going to talk about a possible homecoming for Howard. Not Howard University. Y'all see Howard and homecoming, the black come out of y'all. But Xavien Howard, H-Town's own, recently let go by the Miami Dolphins, and he spoke about wanting to return home here to the city of Houston to play for the Houston Texans. I think this is probably the conversation I can't wait to talk about, which is how different is Joe Mixon compared to Devin Singletary. Please keep in mind, we're talking about 2023-24. But we'll open up today's show looking at Anderson and Hunter. How much of an unstoppable duo should this team prepare to have? But first, I do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $5. That's right. $5 you win. You get $200 in your pocket if your bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started today. I do want to mention before we talk about Anderson and Hunter, the Houston Texans re-signed wide receiver and special teamer Steven Sims.
I like that.
And they also re-signed veteran defensive end Derek Barnett to a one-year deal. As you guys remember, Barnett did have 2.5 sacks, 19 tackles, 8 tackles for loss, and 11 QB hits in 6 games for the Houston Texans. Also, in those 6 games, he started in 4. So now you look at a defensive tackle. I mean, not defensive. You look at a defensive line unit that features some guys that can really get after the quarterback, which leads us to Will Anderson Jr. going into his sophomore year. The vet, the splash signing for the Houston Texans this offseason during free agency, Danielle Hunter. Cody, how much of an unstoppable duo can this tandem be?
I think they have an opportunity to be one of, if not the best, defensive end tandems in the league. And I know that's saying a lot, John, but, this came about when I went back and revisited the introductory press conference for both Danielle Hunter and Joe Mixon. And of course, we'll get into Joe in the second segment. But the one thing that I was looking at in terms of Danielle Hunter, John, you remember prior to free agency, how much I wanted to see this team re-sign Jonathan Gennard. And one of the things that I wanted to Houston Texans to do was make sure you keep that pairing between Jonathan Gennard and Will Anderson Jr. together. You're looking at 2 guys, they finished the season with a combined average of 18 to 20 sacks. And I kept saying to myself, I want to see that pairing thrive. As we all know, Jonathan Gennard, he goes to Minnesota on Monday, and on that Tuesday, they brought in Danielle Hunter. And John, that's when I started thinking this pairing can actually be better than what we saw from Gennard and Anderson during the 2023 season. So Danielle Hunter, he had an opportunity to talk about what he can bring to this team and his expectations to play alongside Will Anderson Jr.
Oh man, that kid right there. I mean, he's exciting. Has a lot of tools. I was with him earlier, and he just can't stop jumping. How eager he is to just go out there and just rush the passer together. very good kid. I'm excited to just be able to go out there and teach him a lot of things that I know and help him become a better player. And same, learn a lot from him also. I feel like the biggest thing about going into a football game is affecting the quarterback. And if you have a team that's able to affect the opposite team's quarterback, it gives you a better chance of winning the game. So, I like what I see here with the D-line, and I'm able to add my attributes and skills towards that and able to affect the other team's quarterback.
When you go back and you review the production of the defensive line unit in 2023, you're looking at a D-line that had recorded a franchise record of 46 sacks. Majority of those came in the second half after they ended up claiming Derek Barnett off of waivers. Just want to throw that in there. But we all know how Coach DeMeco Ryans feel about getting after the opposing team's quarterback. And John, even though I wasn't too high on letting Jonathan Grenard walk out the door for 16 in Kirby and bringing in Danielle Hunter, not just from a talent standpoint, but you know me, it was all about the money. I've always said it. If you departed from Jonathan Grenard, how in the world are you going to be able to find somebody to fit into your salary cap space, find somebody with the appropriate age that lines up with your rebuilding process? And not only that, somebody that can be just as valuable both on and off the field, if not even more. I think the Houston Texans had hit a home run with the signing of Danielle Hunter. You look at Danielle Hunter, he has spent 8 seasons in the league. Out of those 8 seasons, this young man has 5 seasons of recording 10 and a half or more sacks. In 2023 alone, this young man was towards the top of the league at 16 and a half. The pairing between him and Will Anderson Jr., if they was together, based off of last year's number, you're looking at a defensive end pairing that would have recorded a combined 23 and a half sacks. Plus, given how young Will Anderson Jr. is, given his motivation, his willingness to learn from veterans, I think Danielle Hunter is definitely going to be able to bring out more out of Will Anderson Jr.
And I agree. And I think another thing to look at when we look at the tandem of Anderson and Hunter, first and foremost, before I even mention those two players, with how Houston has created the depth of this defensive line unit, Autry, Settle, Davis, Kurt, Derek Barnett, who am I missing?
Khalil Davis.
Davis, like my man KD, like they have put together in terms of depth across that D line. They got some guys that can come in, and you may not have to see, 80% of snaps played by some of these players, maybe like they were previous in their career, because the D-line is deep. And I think what Hunter and Anderson does, they can make that defensive end position, that edge position, however you want to claim it to be, they can make it to where your D tackles are really eating a lot, man. Like just thinking of Autry out there, thinking of Davis going into his second year with this team, thinking of veteran. Fatukauzi, right? He's a part of this group, right? So thinking of these guys being able to play with this caliber of player in Hunter, who has traditionally, and he gave a shout out to I forget his name, but he just gave a shout out to his D tackle that he came into the league with. The D tackles are going to eat with Anderson and Hunter. And now when you look at the two players in themselves, Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson, you hit everything on the coffin, the nail on the coffin with what you just said. But I also want to take a step back and say, how will this impact the rest of the defense? I think those two players are going to be great for one another. But when I think about, put it like this, in 2022, the last season with San Fran, the San Francisco 49ers were third in the NFL with takeaways per game at 1.7. And that was DeMeco Ryans last year as the defensive coordinator. In 2021, they were 1.2, so that was 20th. So you saw the jump from year 1 to year 2. And we also saw from year 1 to year 2, they add pieces to their defense. Now when you look at this defensive line, we got a lot of guys that's over 6'3", around 200, 270, 280 pounds and up, 300 guys. All right, now you're looking at a D-line that can create pressure consistently. My thought right now is, how are they going to help the rest of the defense out? And with the pressure that Hunter can cause, and with the pressure that we've seen Will Anderson cause, the first thought of mine is they're going to be able to create turnovers because quarterbacks are not going to have easy days in the pocket. Quarterbacks are going to be flush from the pocket. So you may see quarterbacks make errant throws. You may see quarterbacks just, get completely mauled over and fumble the ball. You may see quarterbacks maybe complete a throw, but that completion really helped the defense out. So now you're looking at a situation where maybe 1st and 10, if they complete that, is now maybe, 2nd and 7 because the quarterback just didn't have a chance to get comfortable. So the sack numbers are going to be there, guys. I think so. Individually, I think they're going to have stellar seasons, honestly. I think double-digit sacks from the both of them, right? We could possibly see a Robert Mathis and Dwight Freeney type of deal, right? Like where both ends are just eating. But I also look at how will the rest of this D-line eat. And we saw this D-line eat last year with John Grenard and Will Anderson. Everybody is already going to, we can admit that Danielle Hunter is a better player than Grenard, no disrespect. And so now you look at Will Anderson in year 2, like you mentioned, Cody, he's going to be learning from Hunter. What is he learning to get better? And if they ate last year, we saw Malik Collins and Sheldon Rankins, who I think are better than the options that they have here right now, excluding Autry. But we're going to see opportunities for some of these D tackles. We're going to see the linebackers have easier days because you got guys that's just creating pressure up front. And the offensive lines in the NFL now are really bad. They got to go up against some dogs for Houston, and they're going to get their butt whoops a lot of times, right? So now I'm looking at Christian Harris. Now I'm looking at Al-Shaair. But now I'm really looking at Stingley, Okuda, and I got to say his name because he's going to be a part of this mix. Now I'm looking at Petrie.
Definitely.
To be able to just kind of roam free because the pressure up front is making your job easier. I think this duo is going to be impactful for all 3 phases of the defense. We may want to go ahead and put the over-under in for how many sacks Hunter or Will Anderson will have this upcoming season. But I'll tell you what, man, you can go ahead and say goodbye to those busted brackets because with FanDuel, they let you bet on every game of the tournament. Whether you're betting on a big upset or a 1 seed, it's time to go dancing on America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 wins. That's $200 in your pocket to use on point spreads, money lines, and you can even pick who's going to win it all. So just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and bet on all college hoops. Bet on college hoops this tournament season until they cut down the nets.
Welcome back in, ladies and gentlemen, to this latest installment of Locked On Texans. Danielle Hunter, as everybody know, is from the Houston area. And fun story, for those of you guys who don't know, when the Houston Texans defeated the Cleveland Browns in a wild card victory on January 12th, Danielle Hunter was already in Houston. He said he had nothing to do, so he decided to go down to NRG Stadium, buy a ticket, and he said he enjoyed watching the Houston Texans on all levels, from the fans, the coaches, the players on both sides of the ball. He said that he really enjoyed it, and he said that was the moment he knew he wanted to return home and wanted to play for the Houston Texans. So we had one free agent, one offseason acquisition who wanted to be a Houston Texan. And then we had another one who wasn't too happy about the trade, and that is, of course, running back Joe Mixon. You're looking at a guy who has spent his entire career in Cincinnati. He said when he got the news that he had got traded from Cincinnati to the Houston Texans, he said it took him a while to accept the news because he said he wanted to end his career in Cincinnati. He said the one thing that broke his heart the most is the fact that he really believed that he helped that organization rebuild itself. He said when he got there, I believe it was in 2015 or 2016, it was at the bottom of the league. And he said year after year, they got better and better and better. And the next thing you know, they're in the Super Bowl. But he said it wasn't until he spoke to Coach D'Amico Ryans, that's when he said, you know what? I'm accepting this trade.
Oh, yeah, man. When I talked to D'Amico about, 2 days ago, for me, I thought, when I got on the phone with him, it was a hell of a feeling, man. It was like, me feeling like I want to be here, like he embraced me, and he made me feel like I'm wanted, and I love that about him. He was once a player as well, and I think that with what he brings in terms of his intensity and him wanting to be around a great group of men that wants to he pretty much lead by example. And if you see him, he's very enthusiastic on the sideline. He's jumping up and down while his players making plays. And who wouldn't want to play for a guy like that, man? So I'm definitely feel like I'm here. I fit the culture and what they do and what they want to bring. So it's definitely a humbling time to be here, and I'm definitely ready and excited for this new beginning for sure.
A lot of people, including you and I, are excited about the arrival of Joe. However, John, the one thing I keep going back to, how different is Joe Mixon this stage of his career than what the Houston Texans had in Devin Singletary?
Really quick, my takeaway from that little moment from Joe Mixon, 2 words: embraced, wanted, right? And Joe Mixon was on the chopping block last season before the season started. Remember, there was a lot of rumors.
Yeah, I remember that.
Trade him, release him. And so when it happened this go round, after he just had a very decent season for the Cincinnati Bengals, I think he was kind of like, what's up? I did what I had to do in spite of the situations around us as a team not being favorable. Not a good offensive line. Joe in and out, and then eventually missing the season.
Which, by the way, when we got the word that the Texans was shifting their focus on Joe, we was thinking the same thing. Like, he's available,
right? And at that point, he wasn't released yet. He initially, broke it. So those 2 words, I think, for a player who feels unwanted based off of those words, man, you just got to wonder what type of season he's going to have. But to answer the question of how different is Joe Mixon from Devin Singletary, I don't think they're different at all. I don't think, let me say this. I don't think there's going to be a difference between what Singletary did for Houston and what Joe Mixon will do for Houston besides this one point. Joe Mixon will be the undisputed RB1. We look at Devin Singletary. If he starts after week 4, that's a 1,000-yard back on the ground, right? We're going to see more touchdowns. We would have saw more, more of him in the passing game. But because it took 8 weeks for him to get the go for real from the Texans offense from Bobby Sloat and the offensive staff, that's why we're having this conversation. So when I look at what Singletary was able to accomplish in a short time as the starter, I can only think to myself what could have been if he was a full-time starter, which is something that I advocated for during training camp, right? If we remember that conversation, and I got killed for it. So I think that's going to be the biggest difference. Just Joe Mixon coming into the season, undoubtedly RB1. They're going to have Dameon Pierce on his roster. They're going to, I believe, still invest into their running back position. Could still come by free agency, maybe after the draft. They could, more than likely address it in the draft, which I think is probably smart. But I think we're going to see Joe Mixon play behind an offensive line that is going to be healthy, hopefully. It's going to be retooled, hopefully, right? You're not going to have Titus Howard at left guard. You're going to have him back at his position. They're going to get their left guard situation taken care of and figured out. They're going to get their center position healthy, right? Larry Tunsil, he's getting that knee worked on, right? Shaq Mason, who, by the way, his restructuring of the deal was not actually finalized. So, and that goes back to Houston just trying to do that and then trading the first-round pick, try to prepare for something that has still yet to happen, which is a mistake at this point. But you're going to see that offensive line be, world better than what Joe Mixon had in Cincy. And you're going to see Bobby Sloat be smart to say, I need to also find ways to get him involved in the passing game. CJ will be smart to know, I don't have to hold on to the ball too long. I can dump it off to Joe Mixon. And I think he's going to be a very good addition for this offense, but I don't think it would be going from the production that Damian Pierce had last year to now Joe Mixon, right? That's not. I don't think it's going to be that big of a difference between what Singletary did for Houston and what Mixon did. I only believe that the biggest difference will come for 18 weeks, 17 games, barring any injury. Knock on wood, we know that Joe Mixon will be this team starter, and that wasn't the case for Devin Singletary last year.
I think the biggest difference for me, first of all, I do agree. I think both of those, running backs, their style of play and how they could be utilized in this offense is similar. But I think the biggest difference for me is going to come down in the postseason. Because I just keep going back to that game against the Baltimore Ravens where, it was hard for the Houston Texans to find their stride on the offensive side of the ball. And majority of that was their inability to run the football. And I remember sitting in Baltimore inside a M&T Bank Stadium that Saturday, coming back to Houston that Monday. Coach D'Amico Ryans talked about how disappointed he was that the Houston Texans could not establish the run. I don't know if establishing the run would have help them come away victorious in that game because it seemed like a lot of stuff was off. But I do believe that the Houston Texans would have been a lot more competitive if they had an opportunity to establish the run. You look at somebody like Joe Mixon, I think he is somebody that's going to bring that experience doing whether it's a postseason game or, like I keep going back to, knowing that you have a first place schedule, knowing that you're going to be going up against several of the top teams in the league. I think that is where he's going to be the biggest X factor with his addition. Before moving on.
Well, I do want to say that it's not like Devin Singletary didn't bring that. I mean, he came from the Buffalo Bills.
You're right.
Yeah, in the last 3 seasons, Buffalo had been in the playoffs all 3 seasons, I believe, and they were a game away, I think, twice from the AFC conference game. So I think that offensive line just got. Well, I think both sides of the line in that playoff game just got their butts whooped against Baltimore, which is a big reason why I want to put emphasis on getting this offensive line healthy and guys back in their place will also add to what Joe Mixon can do compared to how successful he was in Cincy. But I just want to say that point.
No, you're good. And that is a fair point. But once again, to me, I just look at the experience, the load, and everything that Joe Mixon had. I think that can be a little bit more valuable in what he is able to bring to this team. But before moving on, I do want to play this clip of what Joe Mixon believes he's going to bring to the Houston Texans.
Yeah, man. One is a leader. I mean, I've been a captain the last 3 years in Cincinnati. When I speak, I lead and, speak with command. Guys, they listen and they feed off of me. And, I'm going to just continue to still be the same person that I've been since I walked in out there when I was 20 years old, man. And I've always been a leader, lead by example, and I do be a vocal leader as well. I think that they're definitely getting a playmaker, and I think that the way things was being explained and the meetings that they're willing to showcase everything that I could do, which is very exciting. I've been waiting for this a long time, and I just can't wait to make the most of every opportunity that I can, man, because I just know the type of player that I am and the guys that's around here and the supporting cast around. I think that I definitely could take this thing to the next level. And with the quarterback we got in CJ, man, I mean, like I said, he's phenomenal, and I know for a fact he's gonna make that next jump. And that's in terms of them playoff wins. But obviously, we take them one game at a time. Got to build the camaraderie around the team. And I feel like with me coming in here, and I'm sure they already got that as well, but, I'm here to make sure we all gel together at a high level. We all competing, and we're going to do that each and every day, whether it's on the field, off the field. I think that, like I said, what we got in the making here is going to – everybody, I think Houston got nothing but, great things coming their way, and, to be proud with everything that we're building here.
This show was sponsored by and brought to you by BetterHelp. It can be easy to ignore our social battery and spread ourselves thin, especially with social gatherings picking up after the wintertime. What's the right amount of socializing for you? And how do you recharge, I think, is probably the better question. Maybe you thrive around people, or maybe you need some time alone. Therapy can always help you and give you the self-awareness to build a social life that doesn't drain your battery. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suitable to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Find your social sweet spot with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/locked-on today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/locked-on.
Man, 99. That's JJ's number. He's done a lot with that number. I'm not even gonna mess with it. So to be able to do what he's done with that number for the community and the Texans, I'm just leaving that under him. So I've decided to possibly go with the number 55.
There you have it. Danielle Hunter quickly putting it in to the debate.
What if you would have said I'm gonna roll with 52?
Hey, oh man, that would have been a little bit hurtful a little bit for me knowing that was JG number, but at the same time, I'm pretty sure 52 will look better on him than it did with JG. But once again, shout out to JG, man, one of my all-time favorite players I had an opportunity to cover. But Danielle Hunter, man, I'm glad he made that decision to quickly put the in that he is not going after number 99, and it's even more special because he's a Houstonian. So you go from one Houstonian to another potential Houstonian trying to have a homecoming. And Xavien Howard, he recently appeared on the OG podcast hosted by former NBA players Udonis Haslem and Mike Miller, where he talked about his love for not just the Houston Texans, but his love for the city. First and foremost, he revealed that he has a Houston Rockets and a Houston Texans tattoo already. And he also said that it is a realistic option for him to come back home and join the Houston Texans. By the way, he also mentioned that to join a team like the Houston Texans, where you have a rising quarterback, a coach that he respects, by the way, he said he loves a defensive-minded coach, not surprising, but to have an opportunity to play for a team that's on the rise, that's about to be in playoff championship contention, he also said, John, that he is willing to take a pay cut. So Xavien Howard, this is about the third time since his release from the Miami Dolphins that he has flirted with the possibility of returning home from the Houston Texans. Once again, Nick Caserio said at the NFL Combine that he would love to pair Derek Stingley Jr. with another reliable corner. We don't know if that's Jeff Okudah, but I do believe that CB number 2 could be Xavien Howard if there's interest.
The Texans right now, especially now that the jersey leaked and we see how cool it looks, the new ones, they just came back
people
from
are wearing
Miami. And not not non-playable characters from Grand Theft Auto. But they just came back from Dr. Miami, the NFL version, and now everybody look at this team, kind of like, man, y'all kind of cute, man. I kind of want to see what y'all on. So, but for me, it's still kind of the same. Like I think Howard, thankfully, he acknowledged that he would take a pay cut. He would have to, right? And I think right now the Texans have around $20 million left. But I think that they have more pressing needs to address outside of the cornerback position, because bringing in Howard right now, at least, when you just signed Okudah, those are going to be your cornerback twos. So I think for Houston, it may be more wiser to invest the rest of that salary cap money into that safety position, which I still think is depleted and probably one of, if not the most talented depleted units on this team right now. You're getting up in age with Jimmy Ward, got the injury there, and with the decline from one season, not saying he won't bounce back, but from Jalen Petrie, I think it's smart to get some insurance policies in at that position. But maybe Houston works something out with Howard. I mean, I don't know. Maybe they find, a spot for him. If so, I can't say that wouldn't help the cornerback room out. That could possibly have the cornerback room looking exactly how the D-line room looks. You just got talent, at the D tackle and D end at the edge spot. So maybe CB1, CB2, CB4 could come in and help and do some things, and maybe they get that group to be as deep as possible. But who knows? Thank y'all for listening to this episode of the Locked On Texans podcast. Please be sure to subscribe, like, and comment on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Also follow me on Twitter at John_Hickman12.
And as always, I'm your host, Cody M. Davis. Please remember to follow me on Twitter at CodyDavis_24. Once again, that's Cody, COTYDAVIS _24. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, peace.